All right, so I've got my atlatl nice and thinned out. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up this end. I'm going to get the spur a little cleaned up there, and I'm going to dig a little trough out of this area, which will then undercut the spur a little, leaving me with a nice spur that I can then hook an atlatl into. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by just kind of carving this off here, just basically turning this into a nice smooth round transition here. And then what I'll do is I'll show you guys a close-up of how I like to carve my trough. But it's pretty simple. I just take my knife and I just carefully dig it in along this way on the ground. And what that does is it creates a nice little trough for your dart to slide into. Once we get there, we'll start talking about our handle. Okay, so I've got the end cleaned up. Now we're going to talk about carving our trough. So what I do is I just take my knife and I just kind of slowly start marking out one side here. I'm just running the blade down just like this, and then I'm basically, you're carving like a V out of the center here. And a wood carving tool will work really great at this, like a gouge. Flip it over. See if I can show you guys a little more close up here. And whether or not you need your trough to be deep is totally dependent on the size of your spur and just what your atlatl, the way that the volume is distributed around your atlatl, the volume of wood. So in this case, I don't really need a very deep trough, but I mostly just use the trough so that I can load it quickly and easily without having to think about it. So it's kind of like a guide. When I shove the dart in here, it hits that trough and goes straight into the spur. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep carving this out a little. So my trough, it's getting there. I just have a little bit more to do there, and eventually I definitely am gonna like smooth it out and sand it with some sand on some buckskin once it's seasoned. Anyways, I'm gonna work a little bit longer on this, then I'm gonna refine my spur a little. So I'm gonna bring it in, make it a little bit narrower, and undercut it right here. Once I do that, I'll come back and we'll talk about making our finger holes and the length of, you know, what we want the length to be, because we're gonna shorten this thing a little. It's just too long right now. So I'm just gonna keep carving away. Had to take a little swim. It's too nice out here today. Okay, so now I'm just gonna move on. I've got my trough carved. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna move on and refine my spur a little bit. So I'm gonna give it a little bit different profile as far as how it looks from this angle. And then from this angle, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna undercut it a little so that there is in fact a spur. And I'm probably gonna end up shortening it, so this won't be as tall as it is right now. So I'm probably gonna knock a little bit off the top right now. Don't want to take too much off. So that was just a little adjustment there. Now what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna make it more of a point. So again, change the profile, I'll probably make it so if you can see my knife here, probably take off that corner, and then I'll probably take off that corner. Something like that. So this is a little dicey to do. Best to take your time. Okay, so I've reprofiled it a little. Kind of looks like a cobra, or I don't know. I'll probably bring in the sides in a little too. But now I need to dig this out right here. So this would throw right now, but usually I use a variety of tools for this. Sometimes I use a really small chainsaw file or like a round wood carving file that you would use to knock a bow or an arrow. I'm gonna try and do this with my knife, but with the wood being this green and delicate or easy to carve, I'm a little hesitant to go too deep on this because I feel like ultimately I might end up making some changes once I get this thing all finished up. So I'm gonna just do a little tiny bit here, a little more reprofiling, and then I'm just gonna jump ahead and we're gonna start our finger holes and shorten this thing. And that way, once it seasons a little bit more and it's has a little more structural integrity to it, we'll go ahead and we'll start kind of refining our spur. And the safest way to do this is not in your hand. If you have a table or something, or you can do it on the ground, not your leg. There's a lot of other ways you can carve this, but if you're just out in the woods, you gotta find a fallen down log. And if you're filming yourself, then you gotta find something to prop your phone against, and it's just all bad. So I'm just doing it freehand right now. And that's part of the reason I'm gonna wait for it to season so that I can come back and make sure that I'm not, go slow so I don't cut myself, do all the things that I don't, anyways, I'm gonna shut up. Just one slip of my knife and I could be in a whole lot of trouble. Not trouble, but hurt. Luckily this is an extremely sharp knife. Brand new Mora that I was given. This is the first time I've used it. Okay. You can see it's slightly undercut. I don't know if I can even get you the right angle on that, but it's a little bit undercut. But I'm gonna leave it like that for now. I don't want to take too much off. I'm gonna leave this rough, and now we're gonna talk about our finger holes and our length. So what I like to do is I like to compare the length to my Atlatls that I really enjoy throwing. So here are two of the ones that I really like throwing. In particular this one. So what I'll do is I'll match the spurs up, and I'll go ahead and I'll see, okay, what's the length difference here, right? So there's a couple inches out here on the base that we're gonna trim up. So I'll just lay them on top of each other, if I can. These counterweights make that challenging. Lay them on top of each other, and just for the sake of experimentation, I'm gonna go a little longer on this one. So I'm gonna mark it out right about here. So I got my marking. Next thing I'm gonna do, as you can see with this piece, or here's another piece that illustrates it. This is a piece out of Osage I've been working. You see these little grooves here. So the goal with this is that then rawhide will be lashed or attached so that your fingers fit in there just like this, right? You could also glue a half of wood rings onto it, similar to how I did this one here. Or you could use this technique, which is, rawhide or any fiber for that matter, will work really nicely. So those are two options. We're gonna go ahead and do this. We're gonna cut some grooves out, and we'll leave a little bit of space here to sit in our palm. Get a nice purchase on it. So I've got this here. I'm just gonna leave this mark here for now. I'm not gonna, go crazy with it, but I'm just gonna use it as kind of a guideline to tell me, okay, this is where the end of my atlatl will be. So I want to think about that as the end of my atlatl and like what's going to fit into my palm. So I don't just want to go all the way to the bottom here. I want to leave a little bit in that area. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move a few inches up, and I'm going to create marks on either side. So I'm going to go right about here. And I like experimenting with these. So I really think that when you've gotten to the stage where you make a lot of this stuff yourself and you experiment, it's very rewarding, because what happens is you get less attached to the stuff you make, and then you can experiment rather than just doing the same thing everyone else has been doing. So I think there's a lot of room for experimentation, and I don't think people do it enough. I think we get stuck in these ways of listening to certain people that are really good at it. And you know, there's lessons to be learned there, but at the same time, I think there's a lot more lessons to be learned in going places that you haven't read of people going to before. Guaranteed people have experimented a lot with this. I mean, it's been happening, I don't even know, like since the Paleolithic times. So anyways, I'm gonna keep carving, not lecturing. I'm gonna start by carving big triangles out of here, and then I'll round them out. And I start them small. So this is basically how I start them right here. And they don't need to be super deep. So I start with that. The reason I start them small is so I can adjust them so that they fit my fingers one, and so that they match up with each other and that they're not all cattywampus. If you go too fast and you take off too much stuff, what'll happen is they'll get all cattywampus. Anyways, so here's our notches. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make these a little wider, and I'm gonna rough them out and make it so they fit my fingers, and then I'll turn the camera back on. Okay, so here we have it. Got our finger holes cut in there. We have a nice little palm area that we can get a good purchase on. It's a little short, but again, I'm experimenting. So feeling pretty good about this. And I've knocked about an inch off of the palm area, so I'm curious to see how that works. Some people put like full-on handles in there. And then I've seen a few that have just little nubs, and so I'm going to try that out. So this is where we're going to stop for now. You know, I might do a little bit more whittling, but ultimately I'm going to stick this in the rafters, up in the rafters at my house, and I'm going to let it sit at least overnight, and maybe 2 days, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'll make another video, and we'll talk about finishing this thing up, getting a nice finish on it, whether that's using sandpaper or buckskin with some sand, using some horsetail, and a variety of different materials, natural and man-made, to finish off our Atlatl. And then eventually we'll harvest a dart, fletch it, do the whole deal, and then we'll go ahead and start throwing it. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Jack Harrison Survival, and hopefully I'll see you guys out in the woods.